There is malice, a forethought in all of this. It's been crafted. And I want people to understand. And I want them to wake up. And I don't want them to send their kids to school, because if they do, we're never going to break this. You know, fix the money, fix the world. Yes, that's one thing. But if we want to starve the beast, we can't keep feeding it our kids' hearts, minds and souls, because it's not going to work. It can't just be that one thing. We've got to separate education from state. And we've got to bring the family back to the family unit and just get back to good old-fashioned family values, as they might say on Family Guy.
I couldn't agree more. Separate education from state, because unless you want to keep going with the Nazi model, unless you like the Nazis' thoughts on how to educate people, you should fully support homeschooling, because the Nazis hated homeschooling. So if you hate homeschooling, I mean, I don't want to call you a Nazi, but you have the exact same opinions as the Nazis. So, you know, take that as you will.
And I think this is really important for Bitcoiners to understand, because you can draw a straight line through how they captured the education system, the medical system, and the monetary system after already monopolizing energy, right? So, you know, that everything, all the strings are in place.
You love your children. You want what's best for them. You want to see them succeed and become the incredible people that you know that they can be. The state has no interest in that. They have an interest in beating out any spark of originality, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving. They want you to be great at writing tests, writing essays. They want you to be great at following rules, on doing what you're told, about not asking too many questions, and about not daring to question authority. That is the biggest thing. They do not want you to have the balls to question authority. That is the first thing they will try to beat out of you, and it is done in a consistent and systematized way.
Most of us probably listening to this have been born after 1971. Every single relationship that we have ever built in our life has been built on fiat foundations. That includes with our parents. And we all know where that leads. That's just been built on just quicksand. And fix the money, fix the world. We've got to get back to building on that, on sound money, and everything is off the table. All of it, all systems, all institutions, gone. Sweep them aside. They are not working. Or they are working perfectly as designed.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. The Bitcoin time chain is 870250, and the value of one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. Today's episode is a crossover episode with my friend Daniel Prince, host of the Once Bitten Podcast. Now, given that Daniel and I both have Bitcoin podcasts, you might be thinking that this conversation is going to be all about Bitcoin. And that's a fair guess. And while we do touch on the separation of money and state with regards to Bitcoin, we actually spend most of our time focusing on the separation of education and state. We go deep, deep down the rabbit hole of state indoctrination and reveal the dark historical origins of the public education system, from Prussia to Nazi Germany to the United States. I promise you are going to learn a lot of things that seem almost too outrageous to be true, but sadly they are very, very real, and we have receipts. But on a brighter note, we also talk about homeschooling in general, my personal experience being homeschooled, Daniel's experience homeschooling their 4 amazing kids, tips for parents who are thinking of homeschooling, even if you don't have kids yet, and how parents can take the power back from the state, plus a whole lot more. We were also joined by Daniel's daughter, Lauren, and heard directly from her about her experiences. She is a wonderful kid who I've had the chance to meet in person on a couple of occasions. I was so glad she hopped on, and she is genuinely living proof that homeschooling works wonders. And she joins her dad on a lot of his episodes of Once Bitten, so she's basically a podcasting pro. Before we dive in, do me a favor and subscribe to the Bitcoin Podcast and to Daniel's show Once Bitten, wherever you're listening or watching. Check out bitcoinpodcast.net for episodes and additional resources. Head to the show notes to grab links for my sponsor Bitbox, or just go directly to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker to get yourself 5% off the fully open source, easy to use Bitcoin only Bitbox 02 hardware wallet then get your Bitcoin off the exchange and into your own self-custody. Please send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net if you have feedback or if you're interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast. And if you find this show valuable, consider giving value back by giving it a zap on Nostr or a boost on Fountain. I truly appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into this crossover episode with Daniel Prince. It's a pretty nice little setup on here, honestly. And like, again, I think, I believe Kieran built out Zap.stream, and if it wasn't Kieran, I apologize. But it's pretty sweet. I've been enjoying it.
I gotta get on it. I want on this train. I've never live streamed, and I've always thought, you know what, that'll probably save a shit ton of editing and whatever else, and just ship it, right? If it just, what are we doing overthinking this stuff?
Well, exactly. And like, I don't really do any editing either way. Like I throw in an intro, and that's about it. And I'll record my Bitbox ad reads live, or like I record them fresh each time.
We should do that together. We're both sponsored by Bitbox.
I love, dude, they've been such a great sponsor, like since very early when I started this show, when it did not have a ton of subscribers. And I appreciate that. And I know they've been really good about sponsoring a lot of podcasts that aren't necessarily the biggest ones out there, but they have dedicated fan bases and they're growing. And I just think that's really awesome for an open source, hardcore Bitcoin company to do that. Like it says a lot.
Yeah, they're great guys. They've been part of this show from almost the very beginning of their journey, and certainly probably only 9 months or so into my journey, which started in 2020. Wow. And I've been lucky. That the long-term sponsors that have stuck by me, it's just been a nice little synergy. There's Relay, these guys over here that are very much like the Swan of Europe.
Yeah.
Swan, Jan and Corey contacted me right at the beginning. They wanted to come on the show. They were just excited that there was a new Bitcoin podcast out at that time back in 2020. And, we come to an agreement, and it's just been a long-term relationship with, these three in particular. And, it's great. And I think that's what is so nice about this space. There's, a collaborative effort rather than competitive. And I've never signed a contract with any of these guys. It's just as you go, it's.
Do you, without giving too much away, because I'm always curious about this, do you price sponsorships in Bitcoin, or do you price it in fiat?
I try to be paid in Bitcoin, but then it's obviously down to the constrictions of the regulations on the company on the other side. For Relay, for example, they paid in Bitcoin, but then had to switch to fiat. Then, I understand. They're building a business, and it's that's the way.
From the accounting side, I think it's definitely a little easier for a lot of companies. What you said though about the space, it is pretty interesting. Like, there's all this talk always about there's so many Bitcoin podcasts, and I've said this a lot, but like there really aren't that many if you compare it to how many TradFi podcasts there are, which there are more than you can shake a stick at. Like, it's an insane number. And ultimately, they all give just terrible advice, because most of them aren't telling people, hey, you should study Bitcoin. You should start accumulating Bitcoin. So it's like, until we start eclipsing the number of TradFi podcasts out there, I say we need more and more and more Bitcoin podcasts. Like, bring it on. As many as possible. Number go up for Bitcoin podcasts.
I have been saying exactly the same thing. And you'd think you and I would try and build a moat around what we've built, right? Like, oh no, it's so difficult. You guys are never get no. You've got a laptop, you've got a set of headphones, you got a Zoom account. Press record, motherfucker, and ship it. It doesn't cost you anything. Really zero. And you have no idea how you're going to be paid back, what value is going to come back your way. Forget sponsorship deals and all of this nonsense. If you're coming in to start a podcast with sponsorship deals in the back of your mind, you're coming in for the wrong reasons. If
Yeah.
you're coming in just because you've got all of this knowledge inside of you and you just want to connect with as many Bitcoiners as you possibly can to spread this message and get another 10 people on the network that week, then you're going to succeed. It doesn't matter what your topic is either. You could talk about absolutely anything. Everything is related, obviously, to Bitcoin. So I'm with you. More Bitcoin podcasts, never enough. More YouTube channels, more musicians, more artists, more writers. Like, how else are we going to make it? If not you, then who?
No, exactly. And I mean, I think it's such a good point about like coming in with sponsorship things, because like this, my goal was never to like, oh, I'm going to make a podcast because I want to make money. Like I still have a fiat job. That's how I make money. That's how I, save in Bitcoin. I mine fiat. Like, oh no, still in the fiat world. But it's like the reason that I want and plan on keeping my fiat job for a very long time is because I want to be able to do this no matter whether I get paid for it or not. Like I would still be doing this if there was absolutely no money involved whatsoever. And it's not like I'm, I would have no way of retiring, from my fiat job on this. Plus I work in a family business. So it's like, I'm not really trying to retire anyway. That'd be a bit of a slap in the face to the family around me. But like, I like doing this as, calling it a hobby seems kind of fair, I guess. Like it's something that I want to do and I will do no matter what, because it brings me a lot of joy. And you get to hang out with Bitcoiners, which is wonderful. Like that's really why all the Bitcoin podcasters do it, right? It's because you just want a chance to bring Bitcoiners together to talk about Bitcoin, to talk about Nostr, whatever it might be. Like that's really why we're all in this. It's just to have hangouts with Bitcoiners.
It's therapy 3 or 4 times a week, however many times you're recording, right? You get to sit down and have a conversation. So not Parker, you're Walker. Walker, Lauren is here.
Hello, Lauren.
And I know we were going to do a cross kind of podcast experience here. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. You'll just have to send me the recording file once you're done.
Yeah, I got you.
Hang on. And as you know, on the Once Bitten podcast, Lauren asked the first question, and you guys, you got to meet in Miami.
Yep.
We did.
When we were, we had a great time. It was without giving too much away.
Indeed. I've been. We'll leave it at that. Miami is wonderful. What a wonderful place to be.
So first of all, Lauren, I have to. I'm going to say something. I'm going to try because Walker has come onto the Bitcoin podcast scene and he's taken the scene by storm because he has the best voice.
Oh, come on now.
In Bitcoin podcast. And I don't know whether he's, so I've got to try this because I don't know whether he's got some kind of like secret filter on his microphone or it's like, hang on, let me see. Greetings and salutations, plebs.
It sounds cooler with your accent, I'll be honest. I've got this American accent. It's only going to sound so good.
Come on, throw it down. We've not had it yet.
You mean like, greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. And there are no filters on this. It's just it's pretty raw. I mean, it might be doing some fancy stuff on the side that I'm not aware of, but it's people always ask me. They're like, "Is that you got to stop doing this fake voice, man?" And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like maybe you've seen so many of my videos with Carla where I do like really weird or high pitched voices or, I talk like fiat and so I talk way up here. But like this is just how my normal voice sounds. And so when people are like, yeah, I liked the podcast, except the guy's voice, it's so like just so annoying. I'm like, okay, I'll just let me just go be in the corner by myself for a second and, I'll see if I can change it. But save a swift punch to the vocal cords. I think I'm stuck with the voice for now.
Yeah, well, I love it. I think it's brilliant. And a little story for you. Whenever I'm in the car and I'm listening to it and you cut in with the greetings and salutations, I always chuckle every single time.
I like to hear that. That you just made my day. You made it's only on YouTube I'll get these comments too. There's something about YouTube where people really want to give you like they want to give you very unsolicited advice and be like, yeah, by the way, this is how your podcast really sucks. And it's like, well, thank you. That's not helpful at all. But okay, yeah, I'll take it under advisement.
All right, Lauren. So did you come prepared with a question for Walker?
I did. So,
Wow, 503 episodes in.
yeah.
You've finally come prepared.
Oh, come on. I've come prepared a couple times before. But, yeah, so my question is, will you homeschool your child? And if you would, why?
That is an awesome question. So the short answer is yes. That is Carl and my plan. And the longer answer is I was homeschooled myself. We may have talked about this a little bit in the past, but I was homeschooled. It's something that the older I've gotten to, the more grateful to my parents I am. I was not always as grateful. Yeah, and I swear your dad didn't tell me to say this, but really the older I've gotten, the more grateful I have become. Because first of all, there is an element of like sacrifice as a parent, right? Like it's a lot easier to shove your kids off into a school for 8 hours a day and, stuff after that. It's like that's the easier option. The harder path is homeschooling, but I think it's the path that has a lot more love behind it. And this is not to knock any parents who choose to send their kids to public school. Not my intention at all, just my intention to express gratitude to my parents. And so part of the reason why is, yes, I was homeschooled. I had a great experience with it. I was homeschooled up until 8th grade, and then I told my parents I wanted to try high school because I was honestly worried. I thought my true feeling was I might not be as smart as the other kids. Like I knew I had a lot of, I wasn't like some hermit. I played a bunch of sports. So I had, a ton of friends that were both homeschooled and then public school. And all my public school friends were always doing homework. Like they were always doing all this extra homework. And I was like, my God, these guys are just like, they're working all the time. They must all just be geniuses. But I never had a way to benchmark that against them not being in classes with them. So I said, I want to try out public school. My parents said, okay, well, it's your decision. You can, but you make the decision and, we're not going to tell you what to do. It's got to be your decision. So I said, okay, I'm deciding I want to do public school. I did that. Turns out I was not stupid as I had thought. I did very well. I graduated valedictorian, so number one in my class with not, I didn't overly strain myself. I'll say that. But I more so realized that the amount of time that is wasted in public school is mind-blowing. That was the thing that really got me. I give credit. I had some really wonderful teachers, actually. There were some incredible educators who really cared about the kids, who really did their best. But when you have that many kids, I mean, even, 30 kids in a class, you are wasting so much time. And I was used to getting my work done within 2 hours, maybe 3 hours in the morning, wake up early, get my work done, and then go play outside or go. I used to tie a lot of flies. I used to do a lot of clay modeling. On random days, my mom would take me on little, like mini apprenticeships, like, spent a day with a glass blower, spent a day with a blacksmith. The blacksmith taught me about the Fibonacci sequence. That was like the first time I'd learned about that was from this blacksmith, like random stuff like that. But I would always get that work done, any schoolwork I had early in the morning. I remember doing my math textbooks cover to cover, like literally cover to cover, every single problem, every single chapter, and then got to public school and I realized, wait, you guys only do like odd or even problems and you're skipping all these chapters. Like, how is this taking us so much time every day to get through this? So that was the biggest reason why. And Carla went to public school, but she had a secondary education at home because she immigrated to the United States from Romania. So she was like 1 when she came here. So her parents, as immigrant parents, very much gave her like a secondary education in the home. And that would honestly sometimes be like extra math problems from her dad or lessons on history or whatever it might be. So she's maybe not a typical public school case. But for both of us, I think what it comes down to is we don't want our kid to be wasting so much time in this system that is not designed to foster creativity or designed to foster drive and grit and critical thinking. It's designed to help you study for tests and complete those tests and move on to the next one and not actually dig deep into anything. And so that's the longer answer is we want to make sure that our child is not wasting his time, that any future kids we have are not wasting their time on work that can be done in a small fraction of the time that they make you do it in school. that you don't need to be doing all this extra homework, and that so much of your true education should come from the home, should come from travel, should come from experience, should come from living your life, and also being comfortable being around adults. That's one thing I've always noticed about homeschooled kids, myself included, my sister included. There's never some weird thing about being around adults where you're super uncomfortable. You're used to being around people of all ages. It's a very unnatural thing to be stuck with only people who are exactly your same age. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And preaching to the choir here as well, because, as you know, Lauren's been homeschooled, world schooled, unschooled.
Went to school.
You've
in
had
France.
it all.
So, but you're now 13, so probably the age of 3, we would have started putting you in when we were still in Singapore.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, like a kindergarten thing, like 3 or 4 times a week where you'd go and mix and... but then, the travel, and that's when it opened up for me. When we took the kids out of school, when I threw work in, and this is pre-Bitcoin, I'd poo-pooed Bitcoin many times, sat at my high throne on my foreign exchange broker's desk, and flinging around hundreds of millions of dollars of foreign exchange options, all for Howard Lutnick. Of all people, I can't believe he's pulled out the work. Yeah, that's where I was working the last 4 years of my career.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. Very interesting to see him suddenly pop his head above the parapet and say, beat his chest and yay Bitcoin, and I'm a Bitcoin, and I'm just sitting there like, oh man, like no. You're a rent seeker of the highest order. And nobody should be trusting anything that comes out of his mouth, not one thing. And anyway, so I left that business and we started traveling with the kids because I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and that turned my life upside down. That made me realize that I was living a deferred lifestyle, as he explained in the 4-Hour Workweek, and I just wanted to get off the hamster wheel. I didn't want to be part of that anymore. I had 4 kids at home and a wife. I wasn't seeing. I was a lodger in my own home, and it was like, why am I a part of this world when I should be a part of their world? Like, this makes no sense. Zero. So many sleepless nights, many discussions, went for it, quit. Ripped off the Band-Aid, got out of Fiat land. And that's when we started traveling. And that's when I really started falling down like, oh man, like, wait a minute. One of my biggest fears was taking the kids out of that system. And look at them now, like, just a few weeks in, like, you could feel the family was so different. Like, the pressure was off. They were so much more engaged in learning. You had to pick your time of day, and you had to pick the personality type as well. There were 4 of them, but they would learn so much in such a small amount of time. And if we made the critical mistake of traveling with some textbooks, right? Okay, let's sit down at 9 o'clock and do some science and math. The kickback was just unbearable because that is unnatural. To force somebody to sit down at a table at a certain time and crack open a textbook that just looks like gobbledygook right?
That's kind of true. It's annoying.
Yeah. Oh, right. So what is actually going on in this system? That's when I started picking up John Taylor Gatto's stuff and John Holt's stuff and really going down these rabbit holes and understanding. When you understand how and why, especially in America, how and why the education system was captured and by who and for what and for why, you understand why we have the civilization that we have today. And like the NPC meme is real because they've been through it. They've been indoctrinated. It's eugenics. Of the highest degree.
I'm glad you brought up John Taylor Gatto because I don't know how I had missed his work until earlier this year. I did a show with Shane Hazel who's also homeschool. I know you know Shane well, and he put me onto him, and I've gone through a couple of his books now. And I think that's for anyone listening, I would highly recommend you check out John Taylor Gatto, especially if you are at all interested in homeschooling, or even if you're just interested in the public education system, because he was a public school teacher in New York, across various schools for something like 30 some years. I mean, award winning. But what I love is that this guy, he would use every one of his award acceptance speeches to basically tell everyone in attendance how messed up the public school system was. And I thought that was just kind of brilliant. Like, and he saw how the sausage was made. Like he was one of the sausage makers, like a good one. But, I really highly recommend people check out his books, because they are incredible. And Laura, I'm curious for you, like, was there any hesitation or worry on your part when your parents are telling you, okay, we're going to start homeschooling, like we're going to make this change? Was it a hard transition for you, or were you excited about it?
Well, I was 3, so.
Well, okay, fair enough.
But otherwise, I don't really know, but I guess it just kind of felt natural because I've been in it for so long. And I think I remember this one time when we were in New Zealand and Mummy was trying to like make me spell out my name. I was doing miserable, but I managed in the end. But yeah, when I went back to, I don't know, I don't really feel anything when I change into school or out into school. It's just the same. It's happened a lot of times. So I guess it's kind of used to it now.
You traveled. We bounced around like 15 different countries over almost 3 years when we were on our travels. And then we house sat in France for a couple of months. And then we decided, well, you know what? We need to like moving 6 people every 10 days on average with all our gear. Like this has been great, but like, let's take a
break.
Yeah, let's drop a knee. And we really enjoyed living in France, and Claire and we thought, well, if we could gift our kids like one, attribute, what would it be? Brilliant at math, or this, that, and the other thing. You choose. And for both of us, it was the ability to speak another language. And I don't know why. We just value that very highly, I guess, as native English speakers. It blows my mind when you meet other Bitcoiners. Like Canute can speak like 5 languages, just like without even missing a beat. Like, how do you do that? Like, it's just crazy. So we knew, obviously we didn't even know Canute at that stage, but we knew we'd had the power. We knew that there was a secret power in unlocking learning, brain capacity, and setting yourself apart if you could speak another language, especially if you are a native English speaker. And so that's why we decided to put them back into a school system in France. So you were probably 6, and you walked in with Samuel and Sophia, and Caitlin was going to the older school because she was slightly older than you. They walked in day one with 0 French. 0. In a rural countryside school. And but we knew that would be the best way for them to, pick it up with immersive learning. And we were lucky in the fact that it was very much kind of a Montessori-leaning environment. So it wasn't too strict. But then when COVID came around and the lockdowns, we were out. Like, no way you're going back. No way in the world.
Because everyone was wearing all the masks still after that. And literally, they cut our playground in half. And one of my friends were on the other side. So at playtime, I had to sit on one of the lines. And I just hit you. Sit on one of the lines and talk to my friend on the other side. So it was...
Yeah. Why did they cut the playground in half?
To not get everyone sick. But I was like... my class was right next to like the kindergartens. So like... I don't know. It was really random.
It was one of those classic COVID things where it made absolutely zero logical sense, but they were like, this will keep the kids safe. We'll cut them in half outside.
Yep.
That's mind-blowing.
Yep.
So you just dropped, like, got out at that point? Like, it was like, nope, we're not doing this?
Never, like, lockdown came around and never went back. You know, and that's when the trouble started for us, actually, with the French authorities, because we had to delist this, and the homeschooling spiked huge in France because the parents now got a chance to experience homeschooling and to obviously see the work, the level of work and the level of indoctrination that was being just emailed through. You know, there was no, certainly in the area we were living, there wasn't even an effort to, like, organize a Zoom class or anything like that. Just some photocopied sheets sent through on email, print these off, sit and do them with your child. I mean, this is so freaking retarded. Like, what are we doing? And what are you learning? And, like, that's not even correct. And by this time, obviously, being way down the rabbit hole of unschooling, homeschooling, and Bitcoin, it was just like, right, okay, you're not going back. So we deregistered, and then we had to start taking them, once all the lockdowns and everything finished, like a few years later, we had to take them in once a year to a control, where
literally is in the name, control.
Control, yeah, there's no hiding it. Just say the quiet part out loud. Where they would be interrogated, some would say sat in front of and tested by a history, geography teacher, a math teacher, French teacher, English teacher, and science teacher. Like 15, 20 minutes with each one. And they would just open a textbook, point at a page, ask some questions, and just expect textbook responses, and then move on, next one. And you've got this big, like, treadmill machine of homeschooled families and homeschooled kids, and all the parents are hanging around, like, talking to each other, rolling their eyes, like, my God, like, they they think this is good for the kids. Like, do the teachers even believe in this? Like, really?
What's even worse is only one out of all those teachers were kind.
Really?
All of them were either boring or just looked dead inside or just, like, were really quiet.
Or just mean.
Yeah, pretty much. And most of them smell like smoke.
It is France, so I guess that's, you know, that comes with the territory a little bit.
I guess.
That's insane though. Like, and this was just like, you'd all be in there at the same time. It was like one day a year where they bring in all the homeschooling, you know, conspiracy theorists and put them through this treadmill.
Into a school as well. So you have to take an unschooled or homeschooled kid into a school setting.
Gee.
Which is just...
It was in their church, I think, too, wasn't it?
No, the theatre. They're like big old drama theatre.
Actually, the only thing good that came out of that is because me and my mum went to go, like, see, like, a pantomime, and there was, like, a 14-year-old girl, like, it was pantomime and, like, Cinderella, and she was homeschooled too, and we saw her at the homeschool thing, and at the control, and it was actually really cool seeing her there, because she was the main character, and there was, like, hundreds of people watching her. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, go figure. The 14-year-old homeschooled kid had the lead part in the, you know.
Yeah, shocking, but not shocking if you know homeschooled kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so what did you end up... I was just going to ask, did you guys end up, you know, you said you had some trouble with the French authorities.
Yes.
Did you end up having to, like, say, okay, we don't want to deal with this anymore? I mean, because I know depending on the country, they have, like in Germany, homeschooling is fully illegal and has been illegal since the Nazi era. They love to keep that Nazi law about, you know, indoctrination. That's one of the things that makes, this is a slight digression, but the fact that it's still illegal in Germany because the Nazis implemented a law against homeschooling. It is illegal to homeschool your kids. We will take them away and we will put them in school and we will put you in jail for daring to break the law. That tells you just everything you need to know about what this is all about. Like, it was literally so they could control the message, turn kids into good little Hitler's youths. And it's just insane. And then you can go back even further to the Prussian system of education, which is where all this comes from. But I'll digress too much if I go there. So I'll let you continue about what you did with the French. Once your mind is free of the state's control, you need to make sure that your money is also free from their control. The best way to do that is to go to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker for 5% off the fully open source, easy to use Bitcoin only BitBox02 hardware wallet. Then get your Bitcoin off the exchange and into your own self-custody so that it is actually free from potential state control. Bitcoin is ripping, and your stack will soon be worth a heck of a lot more in fiat value than it is today. So now is the perfect time to make sure you have your security locked down tight with Bitbox. And I really want to emphasize that the BitBox02 is easy as hell to use. Whether you are brand new to Bitcoin, it's your first time setting up a hardware wallet, and you are understandably a little bit nervous, or you are a well-seasoned psychopath. It is Bitcoin only, and again, fully open source. You can head to their GitHub and verify that for yourself. Don't trust me or Bitbox. When you go to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker, not only do you get 5% off a great piece of open source Bitcoin only hardware, but you also help support this podcast. So thank you.
Yeah. We'll come back to that because that's a really interesting part, because I wrote my chapter in Brian DeMint's book, Parallel, is all about this. And I referenced that moment. It was 1938 that they made it illegal. And it was Hitler and Goebbels that signed that. I mean, guys, like, hello. This, I mean, we know why. Right? And before that, homeschooling had been prevalent in Germany. It was, very much one of these class things. It would have been for the upper middle class, probably, where you'd have the private tutors because you wanted the best for your child, right? You wouldn't be sending them to the public education, and then bam, 1938, at the flick of a pen, illegal, banned, your children will be taken away from you. And how, please, German listeners, please challenge your politicians. Like, how is this still a thing? How do you still not have a choice after everything that has happened since that point, 1938? Like, stand up, draw a line in the sand, because you can, if you just Google Germany homeschooling rules, you have these most awful, harrowing stories where you will find like family blogs where they've had to leave the country, or because they've had to, escape the social services. And social services, like, what are you doing? Like, how on earth can you be? How can you forcibly take someone's children away? How brainwashed and indoctrinated are you? I'm sure there's some edge cases where abusive parents, and that's the classic trope, right?
Yeah.
The edge case. You always take the edge case and you label that with everybody else. But I tell you, I am sure there's going to be some social workers out there that they know they've just followed rules, and they know they've got to be so conflicted inside. And this is what we were dealing with in France, because we would go.
They threatened to take Sophia or someone.
No, they didn't. So there's nuance. The letters get sent out. So you go to the control, and this is how the whole system works, because you've got to have layers to the system so everybody can hide behind everybody else, and then it's nobody else's fault and nobody can be held accountable. Sound familiar? It's like any bureaucratic institution, and the public system, the public education system, there's nothing more bureaucratic than that. And in fact, I love the graph on WTF happened in 1971. There's a graph on there which shows you the amount of school administrators since 1971, and that hockey stick. Like, okay, so what? Why is there a hockey stick in administration in public education since 1971? And we all know why. But so you have this layer of bureaucracy. Oh, he's found it. Look, he's good. You have this layer of bureaucracy that you can't hide behind. Now you've got me interested. You're scrolling through these graphs. Yeah,
I'll find this one because I know exactly the one you're talking about. Continue. Yeah, I'll find it on the side.
The letters. So we would take them to the control, and the teachers sit there and they do their thing, and then there's even someone watching them, and you have to report to that person as you leave, and they do their thing, and then the whole write-ups come through from somebody else, like this faceless division telling you, well, this is what this teacher thought, blah, 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 and then giving you an overall rating, and basically your child has not shown sufficient knowledge of this, that, blah, 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 blah. They're going to come back. They're going to have to come back for another control. Otherwise, your permission to homeschool your children will be revoked. And by the way, the social services will also be paying us a visit. But don't worry, because that's just something that happens anyway once a year to all homeschool families. You know, there's all of this, just baked in crap.
But they were kind, though.
Yeah, well, the social services, they come round, and it was the lady I knew from the gym.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like,
really?
we
lived in a very small village, right? Everybody knows each other. And they sit there and they ask their kids, well, what do you do? And the kids we do this and we do that and we do this. And they spin their laptops around. Like, look, this is our schedule on any given day. And then, all right, and then okay. They're ticking boxes. They can't keep up with what the kids are saying. They're trying to tick. And the kids are doing this in French too, right? In perfect French, speaking to them. And they were supposed to even come and check their bedrooms to make sure that Claire and I had provided them with a desk and a chair.
I don't think they even bothered, did they?
No, I asked them, come and see the kids' bedrooms. And like, oh, no, it's okay. Tick. Because, thankfully for them, a little bit of common sense did prevail, and they could see that you were in perfect health and engaged.
We weren't abused.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Like the main thing they should really be checking for, right, is like, okay, are these kids happy and healthy and learning things?
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
I must have just skipped over. I'm going to find this on the side here. But I mean, was that just like for you kids, Lauren, like, was this just kind of like an experience of like why are they doing this? Or did you kind of did it just seem like ridiculous? Like, I know my parents are providing for me. Like, why are there these bureaucrats in here who are basically checking up on them to make sure they're, not terrible people? I mean, like, what was that like?
Like, it was horrible because I had to study stuff I didn't want to. And a lot of I knew I was going to fail the test anyways because they have a grudge against English people. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Les Anglais.
Yeah. And I knew I was just going to fail it anyways because, one, the teachers were just annoying, and I only had 15 to 20 minutes. Like, who can spill out all what they've learned in 15 to 20 minutes? Also, the main problem is I didn't get why they cared. They don't care about us anyways, so I don't get why they cared. And I just found it boring and annoying, and a lot more stress and a lot more tears that should have been. They were doing worse. They were doing more harm than they wanted. Like, what's that I'm saying?
More harm than good.
Yeah, more harm than good.
I mean, it's just kind of crazy because, again, it's like based on my personal experience and the personal experience, of course, of people that I grew up around, the people that homeschooled their kids did not do so. And of course there are edge cases. And as you correctly pointed out, those edge cases will always be used to make the example. They'll be treated as the rule and not the very small exception, because otherwise their entire argument just falls to pieces, right? But everyone that I knew that was homeschooled or was, even if it was just for a short period of time, their parents did it out of love. Like, it was coming from a place of, I love my kids so much that I think this is the best thing that I can do for them. Because what is there better than spending more time with your parents, spending more time with your kids, spending more time with your siblings, who, if you're going to school, if you're not the exact same age, if you're not, twins, you're probably not going to see very often. And that's, 8 hours a day plus. And it just seems so, I don't know, just so insane. And maybe it's a decent time. I would love to dig deeper into kind of the origins of some of this, but I want to check if there was anything else on the French side, because I have to imagine that some of these people were well-meaning in what they did. They thought, right, I'm just doing my job. I'm supposed to go check. I'm just following orders. But obviously, like a lot of bad in history has come from just people following orders, right? And if there's critical thinking involved, one may realize that those orders are in fact completely pointless and don't actually achieve any positive result whatsoever. Like there was nothing positive that came out of you guys being harassed and checked like all these other homeschooled families. Nothing that came out of that in any way helped the kids.
No, it's there's so much here, man. We can keep going very, very deep onto this topic. I just want to make sure. Are you still happy hanging out, or you want to?
For now, do you want me to get that chair?
For now, yeah, okay. Sure, grab the chair because my legs are dead. Right. Okay. Bring it over here. There you go. And I just want to grab the book. So
I may have found this graph.
Here is. Have you read this one? John Taylor Gatto.
Wait, I'm sure I need to make the picture a little bit bigger. Which one is that?
The Underground History.
No, I have not read this one.
So this is the underground history of the American education system. It's big, guys. Like, you know, it's this is a tome. And John took a long time to try and even find a publisher for this. And he actually wanted... I had Pat Ferenger on the show who took over Growing Without Schooling from John Holt. And Pat was one of the very first to read the manuscript and spoke to John about it and said to John, I don't know, man, there's a lot of, kind of conspiracy stuff in there. I don't think many people are going to really want to touch that. Are you sure you want to go down this route? And it took a long time for him to find a... you found a graph. Well done. Growth in administrative staff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is wild here. So we've got... and this is just from 2000 to 2019. Yeah. I'm sure it's gotten worse. And maybe the number of students has actually plateaued even more because more and more people have started homeschooling. But okay, 88% growth in administrative staff just since 2000. Principals and assistant principals percent change since 2000, 37%. And then student percent change, it's up 8%. I mean, and by the way, teachers, the number of actual teachers has stayed the exact same too. So the teachers and the students have not changed. We've just added many, many more times more administrative staff and principals and assistant principals. And it's like, these are just examples of like, all you're doing is adding to the bureaucracy. You're not in any way enhancing the child's education. Administrators do not do that. If they did do that, we would see education metrics improving, which we do not. So this is a very easy, like, it's just, again, like not to bring it back to the money, but it's administrative fiat bloat, right? These people need to then find ways to make themselves busy because there's actually nothing there productive that they're doing. And so then they invent a bunch of things that don't actually help the child at all. And they spend their time doing those and wasting the teacher's time and wasting the student's time. But at least they're collecting a paycheck and telling themselves that they're somehow useful. Like, it's just, it's mind blowing when you see it. And again, this is just since 2000. I wish I could find the other one, but at least this one still tells a pretty good story.
Absolutely. I'm sure it was on WTF, or maybe I've mixed my memory up, but this is the graph I had in mind. And what people have to understand as well, I want to speak directly to the teachers here. Like, you are just as trapped as the kids.
Yeah.
Like, Walker and I here aren't pointing fingers at the teachers. We're pointing fingers at the system. And the teachers are part of that system. And there's a hierarchical order. And you can see this is perfectly laid out just in this little picture here. You have this administration. And we have bodies here in the UK, Ofsted. I'm going to call it Ofsted. I don't even know what it even stands for. But basically, it's a bureaucratic organization that goes around rating schools. They are going to give the school a rating. And these people, they go into and they will infiltrate the classroom. They will sit at the back of the class and they will watch and they will listen and they will mark this teacher and they will check the engagement of the kids and yada, yada, yada. And like the ambiance of the school, and then they'll take all of the the marks, and they'll look at the exam results, and then they'll grade this school. This is nonsense, and this is anti-teaching. But this is what the teachers are up against. That's just one thing. In the staff room, it's something completely different, because then you've got your head of year, or you've got your head of department, and then they've got their vice principal, and then they've got the principal, and then they've got the dean. It's just all of these layers, like I said before. So nobody is designed perfectly well, so nobody ends up taking accountability. And as a parent, if you dare challenge this system, if you fear for your child, if you see something in your child isn't right, like they're coming home and just shutting themselves in their bedroom, they're not engaging with the family unit, and they just look depressed, for want of a better word, or they're being, all of a sudden, you're getting the call, come and get so-and-so, they need to go home, they're in the principal's office or in the headmaster's office, come and get so-and-so because they're disrupting the class. Maybe you need to take them to a doctor and get some kind of diagnosis for ADHD or ADD, or, all of this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I am saying it's completely and utterly, totally overdone, and it is all a product of this system, and it's been carefully manufactured. And, okay, what's the classic? Oh, Princey, don't attribute to Malice what, you could attribute to just stupidity. And I'm like, no. When especially in America, when you've read this book, and when you've learned about the General Education Board, and you've learned about the role that John D. Rockefeller played in this, then you realize the eugenics that's happening right under your nose, right in your home, your family home. If your child brings homework back into their bedroom, that is literally the state reaching through your front door and throttling your kid. And that sounds hyperbolic, but you have to sit back and think about it psychologically and philosophically, and think about, why is that happening? Why are they being taught this about their history, when I know actually that's not right? Like, there's something there. And this is where the teachers again are trapped. Let's take a biology teacher. Let's take some teacher, the age of 45, who is teaching human biology and has taught human biology since they graduated. So they've been teaching it for 20 or so years. And now they turn up. And that year, the curriculum has changed to teach kids that there's 3 sexes. And you're going to stand there in front of those kids and teach them that? This is wild. And why? Why? Because you've got 20 years and you're just looking for the exit. They own you because they own your pension. So you are literally theirs. And this is all carefully crafted. There is malice, a forethought in all of this. It's been crafted. And I want people to understand. And I want them to wake up. And I don't want them to send their kids to school, because if they do, we're never going to break this. Fix the money, fix the world. Yes, that's one thing. But if we want to starve the beast, we can't keep feeding it our kids' hearts, minds and souls, because it's not going to work. It can't just be that one thing. We've got to separate education from state. And we've got to bring the family back to the family unit and just get back to good old-fashioned family values, as they might say on Family Guy.
Amen to that. And I appreciate the clarification, too, that this is not us railing on teachers, because they, like we saw it, it's not like it's the teachers that are getting hired in droves. No, it's the administrators. It's the bureaucrats. My experience has been that most teachers I had, at least in my public school time that I interacted with, were genuinely very good teachers who were spread way too thin, who were not given ample resources because the resources were all spent on paying bureaucrat salaries, and who were in teaching because they wanted to educate children. It wasn't because it wasn't going to make them, rich. It could if you weren't paying so many, goddamn bureaucrats to do absolutely nothing and invent new problems that don't exist. But the teachers were there because they wanted to make a difference in young people's lives. And I think that's truly admirable. And it's such a shame that this is where we've gotten to, that this administrative state at both the government and the, even though, whether it's the federal government, whether it's the local school, there's so much bloat. And when there's this bloat, that's just inefficiency, right? That's people that are thrown there and given a salary and who don't actually contribute anything productive. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Separate education from state, because unless you want to keep going with the Nazi model, and I know none of us like Nazis, then you should be, this is my new thing. It's like, unless you like the Nazis' thoughts on how to educate people, you should fully support homeschooling, because the Nazis hated homeschooling. So if you hate homeschooling, I mean, I don't want to call you a Nazi, but you have the exact same opinions as the Nazis. So, take that as you will. It's nuts, though. It's nuts that this is even, I hope that the German citizenry stands up and says, you know what? No, we're going to homeschool our kids if we want to, because this is a Nazi era policy. And we've tried to get rid of a lot of the other Nazi stuff. Why not this? It's nuts.
Yeah. Sorry, this has nothing to do with it, but I need to go and wash my hair because I only have an hour to do that right now.
That's okay. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Sorry, I cannot miss or wash my head out. That's not important, but I'm not trying to get out of this, I swear, but I only have an hour to do it. So.
I won't hold it against you.
Me. I thought you would let me jump in. I've got something to say.
No.
You guys are killing this.
I know.
You just got to go.
I need to go wash my hair. That's the most important thing right now. Okay, no, I'm kidding. That's not, but okay. Anyways,
don't worry.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good to see you. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye, thank you.
I can see everybody logging off Nostr right now. All right, okay, Lauren's left.
She's going to wash her hair.
Yeah. Is she out of the room now?
Yeah.
Because I was just going to say, I wanted to give her a very nice compliment, but don't want it going totally to her head. But I don't think it would, because she's well-rounded, because she was homeschooled. But your kids are such a wonderful example, I think, of what homeschooling does for families and for kids, and the kind of creative, problem-solving, critical thinking young people that it creates, who are actually going to go out and build shit in this world and not just check boxes their whole life and follow rules their whole life. Like that. Well done, man. Well done.
Thank you.
Seriously.
That's very nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I just hope that it's funny. This is the second podcast I've done today. And this morning I was chatting with Naku 2000, and we were going through his latest piece for Bitcoin Magazine. And he was talking about the digital, being addicted to the digits, basically, like looking at the dollar sticker price. And it's a really good article. And we did an hour rip on that. And then he said, now I want to talk about homeschooling. I'm like, okay. And they've just had their baby girl, and she's brand new. And so we did the whole thing. And he's like, if it wasn't for the likes of you and other people in the Bitcoin space that have started talking about this now, this wouldn't have been on our radar. So it's huge that it is. And so many more people, especially in the Bitcoin space, Bitcoiners see things so much quicker than most, right? As soon as oh, hang on a minute. I'm not going to dismiss that. I used to. Knee-jerk reaction, dismiss all this stuff. It's like, okay, I've lost that reaction. I'm going to dig into that and see what else there is to look at here. And this is what's happening, I think, with the homeschooling. But I'd love for you, Walker, to, because we brought up John D. Rockefeller here, and I know there's a lot of American listeners out there that still think John D. Rockefeller is this incredible businessman and wonderful philanthropic human being. And I don't know whether that is part of the education system which he built to propagandize people into believing his legacy. But if you go to Wikipedia and just pull up, or you could even probably go to their website, the General Education Board. Actually, go to Wiki, because it gives you the history of how it's founded. And I think this is really important for Bitcoiners to understand, because you can draw a straight line through, how they captured the education system, the medical system, and the monetary system. after already monopolizing energy, right? So, everything, all the strings are in place. So you got the General Education Board here. Now, could you read that second paragraph there? The board was created because you've got the best voice in the Bitcoin podcasting arena.
I will happily do it. The board was created in 1902 after John D. Rockefeller donated an initial $1 million, equivalent to $35,215,400 in 2023, to its cause. The Rockefeller family would eventually give over $180 million to fund the General Education Board. Prominent member Frederick Taylor Gates envisioned the country school of tomorrow, wherein young and old will be taught in practicable ways how to make rural life beautiful, intelligent, fruitful, recreative, healthful, and joyous. By 1934, the board was making grants of $5.5 million a year. It spent nearly all its money by 1950 and closed in 1964.
Sounds great, right?
Sure.
Sounds like a
Education,
nice
right?
thing to do. So now, if you look at the history, so just underneath here, the formation of the General Education Board, I'll read this bit because then I want you to read the philosophy, which we come to a little bit later on. So the formation of the General Education Board began in early 1902 on January 15th, 2 months after the Southern Education Board was founded. A small group of men gathered at the home of banker Morris, is pretty small, I can't read these names, to discuss education. This meeting included John D. Rockefeller Jr., thank you very much, Curtis Ogden, George Foster Peabody, that's an important name, which you learn about from John Taylor Gatto as well, Jabez Lamar Monroe Curry, William Henry Baldwin Jr., and Wallace Buttrick. That day, the men discussed raising educational standards and widening educational opportunities. Secret meeting. Sound familiar? This playbook? 6 or 7 dudes in a room discussing how do we craft the perfect, in their eyes, system going forward. And this was all formalized on February 27th, 1902. A second meeting was held at John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s home. This meeting was attended by the guests of the original meeting, but also included 4 or 5 others. At the climax of the meeting, it was announced that John D. Rockefeller Sr. would give $1 million for the inauguration of an educational program. Thus, the General Education Board was born. Now, if you scroll down, why do I keep calling you Parker? Walker.
It's okay. It's an ending in ER name. I get it all the time. Yeah. As long as you don't call me Walter, we won't have a problem.
Right.
Parker's
Okay.
fine.
Fine. I won't call you Walter. Keep going down. I want you to find philosophy, and then you're going to read directly from there you go. So it said at the top there that there was a paper released by Gates, I believe, called The School of Tomorrow. And this paragraph is the paragraph that John references here in his book. So take this one sentence by sentence if you want, because it's incredible.
Okay. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. I've got to stop right there because the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. That is what a way to start it out. Like
they're not even hiding this stuff.
Like you're telling people, you're saying you want to mold them. And by the way, it's great because they're super docile, just like cattle. They're just doing exactly what we say. Okay, I'll continue. Well, you were right about sentence by sentence. It might take me a while to get through this. The present educational conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill, upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. Okay. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. Okay, so they're literally, first of all, saying like, oh, these sweet little rural folks, so stupid. We'll just keep them stupid, right? have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists. Does that actually say embryo great artists?
Yeah.
Does that?
Yep.
Okay. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as a very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children into a little community and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. Wow. Wow.
It's all there for you people. Like they're telling you what this was set up to do. Yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand.
This is just kind of mind-blowing because they're literally very explicitly saying in their lovely, era-appropriate writing style, like, it doesn't matter if these kids could turn out to be, I'm assuming that's what they mean by embryo great artists. Like, they're not searching for people that may have an incredible born talent, nor trying to foster that. Doesn't matter if they have it. They're just simple rural folk. Let's make sure we keep them simple, keep them, again, docile so that they'll be nice and supple in our molding hand, and make sure that they just stay exactly where they are. And that's an interesting one because you can see they try to craft it a little bit like, they have a perfectly ideal life. But what they're really saying is we want to make sure they stay broke, uneducated in the actual, like in philosophy, in politics, matters of the state, but certainly in matters of economics. We want to make sure they do not move up the socioeconomic ladder at all, because then they might cause some problems for us, given that they're just simple country folk. We can't have them getting too big for their britches. Like, this is nuts, though. It's insane.
And this was written in 1913. If you click that link on the bottom there, it says General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1, like the country school of tomorrow. It's going to take you, there you go. Like, this isn't a conspiracy. That's the actual document right there on the archive.org. And this is from the horse's mouth. It's unbelievable.
I'm going to drop this in the chat for anyone who wants to dive into it a little bit more.
Well, in fact, it is a conspiracy. It's just not a theory. Like these dudes got together in a room, they hashed this out, and then they got the money that they needed to go and form this General Education Board. And Frederick T. Gates, he was the mastermind behind this whole idea. And this is where the idea of Rockefeller being a philanthropic freaking angel is like, because it's like, oh, well, let's use the money to fund the education system. So then, and of course, that all comes with tax breaks, huge amounts of tax breaks. This is why, these endowment funds in some of these universities. And he started with, I believe, the University of Chicago. Well, there's even Rockefeller University nowadays, right? But MIT was another one. There was a handful of ones that got, heavily funded. And then when you learn from Safedine in particular, how the peer review study system works, and you can just every single time you start peeling back a layer of this onion, you can follow the money, follow the incentives, and you get back to the same thing. It's control is power. Let's look at the medical school, right? The American Medical Association. Again, that came off the back of that was the Flexner report, and I'm getting my dates mixed up. I can't remember exactly when that was. We'll have to find out. But the Flexner report comes out. That gets picked up. That gets more backing by Rockefeller. And the idea of the Flexner report was that we one, there are too many doctors, too many. We can't have this decentralized network of doctors running around and teaching people that certain roots and leaves and bark and things like that mixed together, living off the land, that knowledge that's been passed down from maybe native people all the way through to like the European settlers, or perhaps Asian settlers have brought in a different idea of, homeopathy, naturopathy, acupuncture, all this kind of stuff. No, we can't have. Like, no way in the world. Like, this is nuts. How do we capture that? Well, we call them all quacks, and we completely deride them. We make them look absolutely stupid, and then we have real medical training that gets pushed through the universities. But how are we going to make sure, how are we going to keep control of that? Well, who's going to certificate that? Well, let's preordain ourselves to give these guys the certification because we own the education system, right? So this must mean that we are the only ones that can certificate them. So they have to go through our training. So how do we make sure we only have the ones that we're going to be able to control? Well, let's make it 4 years minimum, like really expensive and fucking hard. And then the people that do come out of that, when they get that little piece of paper and they can stick in a frame on their wall and they can go off and start dispensing our drugs, our allopathic medicine. Like this is, again, people are going to be like, oh, here we go, Princey again on one of his conspiracy theories. Follow the money. Like, just follow the money.
And I want to hang on education for one more sec because I want people to understand really like how far back this goes. And I'm just going to share. All I did here was I just Googled Prussian education system, and you're free to try this for yourself. Now this is Google's AI, which we know is let's say it leans on the less conspiratorial. It leans on the more woke side of things, right? So if Google's AI is giving you these nice summary facts, you can imagine that the truth may be even far worse, right? But just because we touched on Prussia earlier, and I want people to understand this. So the Prussian system of education was a model of education developed in the 18th century that aimed to create citizens that were loyal to the state and could be good soldiers, workers, and clerks. The system was designed to indoctrinate children into following the state and its military leaders. And so just right there. And again, you can look down here at the characteristics of it. Okay, the curriculum's focused on strong national identity, science, technology. Oh, sounds fine. But classrooms designed to teach obedience and respect for hierarchy, student division, divided by age, not by what needed to be learned. Teacher authority. So again, constant appeals to authority being ingrained in you at all times. School year, okay, at least they extended that, to better accommodate the children of farmers who would be, working and learning skills in the summertime, but compulsory attendance. So at this time, it was just between the ages of 7 and 14. So the Nazis made sure they got that a little bit longer. Also includes religious instruction, like, okay, whatever there, but that's just more this. You have to realize that the Prussian school is the Prussian state, is the Prussian church. So this is just complete concentration of church, state, education. And then teacher training. Okay, they're given a basic salary. But the point here, just loyal to the state and could be good soldiers, workers, and clerks. Indoctrinate children into following the state and its military leaders. Again, that should just send off so many alarm bells for people listening to this. That
I want to build on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You've laid me up perfectly because this is Brian's book, Brian DeMint Parallel. And he asked me to write a chapter about education. So I wrote chapter 5. And so I went really deep down this rabbit hole of Prussia because John Taylor Gatto had brought it up in his book. So I cite this book a great deal in this chapter. And the reason this come around was because of the fall of the Prussian city called Jena, Jenna. Napoleon's army defeated the Prussian army in the Battle of Jena. Jena, excuse me. This victory solidified Napoleon as a military genius, led to the occupation of Berlin, the fall of Prussian military, and fanned the flames of Napoleon's vision of a unified and controlled Europe under French rule. So this is going on in 1806, right? There's a guy, a philosopher, who watched this. He lived in the town of Jena. His name was Johann Gottlieb Fichte. A philosopher in the town of Jena witnessed this embarrassing defeat. Fichte became highly critical of the state of Prussia and in 1807 delivered some lectures titled Addresses to the German Nation at the University of Berlin outlining his belief that education needed further reformation. It was his belief that this embarrassing defeat at the hands of Napoleon could be traced back to how poorly the children were being taught in the education system. So this is why there are so many military references here. So then I pulled some of his quotes from that talk, and I'll just read a few out. The schools must fashion the person and fashion him in such a way that he simply cannot will otherwise than what you wish him to will. I mean, come on. What
the fuck?
Yeah, right. And let me throw another one at you. It is essential that from the very beginning, the pupil should be continuously and completely under the influence of this education and should be separated altogether from the community and kept from all contact with it.
I mean...
So there's a dude called Horace Mann. He's an American. And Horace Mann was he's a very important part of the formation of the American education system, because he, of course, like many bureaucrats, had political visions of grandeur, and he wanted to work his way up. He was really trying to make a wave in the formation of the education, and this is before the General Education Board. This was late 1800s in America. So he came across to Prussia to study their model with the intent to take it back to Massachusetts, I think he was, to take it back there and start, stamping his authority and, furthering his career. Now, as John points out in his book, he chose to make that journey to America. So, but by the time him and his wife got there, schools were on like an Easter break or something, whatever it was. Like, they didn't see one teacher, they didn't get a tour of one school, they didn't interact with one student the whole time. And we only know this because his wife wrote in her diary or to a letter that sent someone back, and this has since been found out. So the whole system's been built on the sham of Horace Mann coming back and saying, this is how they do it in Prussia. And you've just heard just two of the lines from these addresses that were given at the University of Berlin, where they did start implementing these ideas, this philosophical idea of like, we have to take the children away from the family, because if we want to be a strong nation, we can't just leave them there with their parents and their siblings getting all soft and not contributing to what our vision is and keeping us strong. No, we can't have them tending to their own food and their own vegetables and raising animals and doing what they want to do, or search for embryo artists. We can't have people doodling on sketch pads in their bedrooms in their bored time. We can't have people messing around with musical instruments for 7 hours a day. No, we've got to corral them into small groups of 15 to 20, 25 people, preferably all male if we can really get away with it, and have them stand up and move on the bell and all open and sit down together and stand up together and open the book to page 24 together and learn what we have to teach them. That's what we want. That's how we build a strong nation. That's what was brought back to America. And that's what I want people to understand. I mean, it was already happening in Britain and already happening in France and Germany. But this is how it was built in America. And look, America was built on people escaping that shit. Like, they were escaping religious persecution, yes, but this as well. Like, it's this attack on the family comes from all angles.
It's so true, and I think this. I love that the theme of this conversation has developed into the separation of education and state, because, and you raised this earlier about separation of money and state. That is great. That is something that everybody probably listening here wants to see happen, and we already have that, right? We have the separation of money creation from state. The state cannot create Bitcoin. They may develop Bitcoin strategic reserves. They may do any of this. That doesn't matter as long as they do not have the keys to turn the printing machine on, and they can't with Bitcoin. But without separating our educational system, and I don't even want to call it an educational system, because calling it a system, right, implies centralized organization and control. But okay, let's say we need to separate our modes of education from the state, so that the state does not have absolute and total fiat power to dictate exactly what they think children should be taught. And it's wild to look back at some of these old quotes, because again, I think it's very easy for people to say, God, these two guys ranting and raving like a couple of conspiracy theorists. Come on, public education isn't that bad. I went to public school. And it's like, well, you were, and they did a good job because you think that we're conspiracy theorists, when you could just do the research for yourself and figure out that this is exactly what they want, for you to not question, for you to believe that official narratives are not just, propaganda, which is what they are, but to believe that they are the gospel truth, to believe that they are fact, to believe that the state wants what's best for you, that the state and all of the bureaucrats that make it up are actually working in your best interest as an individual, in your family's best interest as a unit. They are not. I think that probably nothing has been more detrimental to the dissolution of the family unit than separating parents from kids for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at a minimum. I mean, I can't think of anything more detrimental. And then at the same time, the state is making sure that your currency is debased so drastically on a constant basis that both of your parents need to work constantly just to make ends meet, and that there's no possibility of having one parent stay at home to spend as much time as possible with the kids as they can. What gives me hope here is that now, like when my parents were homeschooling me, like the internet obviously was not what it was today. This was 90s and into the early 2000s. My mom was getting some curriculum help from other homeschooling collectives, mailed to her in the mail. Couldn't go on YouTube to Khan Academy or whatever it may be and find, an amazing free lecture on absolutely anything you could ever want. It just wasn't there, but it is now. And there are so many resources available. And so what I'd like to kind of talk about a little here, after I read just one more thing about what Hitler thought about education, just to really drive home this point. But I want to talk about kind of the hope that there is now, because I think a lot of parents may feel, oh my God, this the educational system is messed up. I agree. I would love to homeschool my kids, but I don't think I'm equipped to do that. I'm not a teacher. I saw this on Twitter X, the other day, somebody being like, I have 2 master's degrees, 2 PhDs, and I've been in higher education for 20 years, and I don't feel qualified to teach a child. And it's like, well, did you not read what you just said before that? You have been so deep in the system for so many years. Of course you don't think you are. But none of your PhDs in underwater basket weaving help you in the real world, nor do they clearly help you to be a critical thinker who can realize what kids need most is the freedom to experiment, the love of their parents, and some basic knowledge about how the world works. And you also notice that all the most important things aren't actually taught in school. You learn a lot of useless stuff that you never, ever, ever use again. But stuff like, hey, how does money work? That's never raised in school. How do I start a business? How do I, none of this stuff is ever taught in school. I mean, they were probably still teaching kids, here's how you balance a checkbook, up until a couple years ago, even though it's been completely irrelevant for a very long time, because that's just what this system is. But before we get that, myself? Yeah. How do I feed myself? How do I grow food? Wow. But there's this, where did I just find this quote? Now I've lost it again. Let me see. I'm going to find it. I think it's from something from, we'll come back to it because I want to find this later. I think it's from Mein Kampf. But
whoa, really?
I'm going to see if I can get back to it now. I don't know somehow I lost it. But what's your advice to parents who think, okay, I just don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm equipped for it. I don't, know if my spouse is equipped for it, depending on what your home situation is. I just can't possibly do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no blanket advice because everybody's in a completely different
Sure.
place with their life and with their financial situation. But to your point, you've been gaslit into believing that you can't teach your children. Like that's the first thing you've got to address. Like, how dare they? Like you wouldn't stand for some stranger coming up and telling you how to bring your child up, or tell you off in the supermarket because you let them stray 2 yards from, it's the same thing. You've been gaslit into believing that I'm not smart enough to teach at home, or you're just hiding behind that as an excuse. To be blunt, I hid behind it because when I was going through my change, sounds weird, my mind shift, I was, oh, well, yeah, I mean, how many years did I sit at my desk before I did actually quit? There was a long time finding excuses to hide behind, and that would have been one of them. Well, I'm not smart enough. I was never good at math at school. I'd never be able to teach math. Like, this is crazy. I couldn't teach science. Like, who the hell do I think I am? And to your point, you don't have to. There are so many tools, and that's not how it was all. Again, if you just look back through history, like a timeline of human history, let's say it's here. This is where we started. This is where we are, right? The school education system, as we know it, started there. So all of this that happened beforehand, what was going down? And I guarantee you, it wasn't. It would have been more of a like your mother did with you. Let's go spend a day with a blacksmith. But your blacksmith might have been your Uncle John. Let's go and spend a day with a glassblower, and that might have been Auntie Jane. Whatever. We would have been much more of a family unit, or if not family unit, a community. God forbid, a community of neighbors that actually interacted with each other. Not like we have today, where everybody is so, disinterested in connecting with other human beings. People are just walking around. This is like the NPC meme is so strong. But you get to a Bitcoin conference, you can't walk 3 steps without hugging people and talking to people, complete strangers that you've never met and that you've just met on Twitter a couple of times. You're like, what? This is crazy. Why can't my normal life be like this? Be just full of hope and full of joy, because it's been completely beaten out of them. And people don't have a belief, and they honestly, they paint themselves into this corner of a career, and they think that's going to be that's their life now for the next 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it is. They don't have the time, the energy. They don't have the freedom that they need to think a little bit deeper and just question their own thinking. Like the monkey in their head that's spinning around, doing backflips, slamming cymbals together, and just making all of this noise, that's you. Like, you are in your way, and if you can't calm that down and step back and just think and sit with your thoughts and try and quieten them down, and then start questioning the narrative and the gaslighting and the propaganda and this endless barrage of shit that you've been born into. Most of us probably listening to this have been born after 1971. Every single relationship that we have ever built in our life has been built on fiat foundations. That includes with our parents. And we all know where that leads. That's just been built on just quicksand. And we've got to get back to, and this is fix the money, fix the world. We've got to get back to building on that, on sound money. And we've got to everything is off the table. All of it, all systems, all institutions, gone. Sweep them aside. They are not working. Or they are working perfectly as designed.
Well, that's really the point, isn't it? That this is, because I come back to the same thing you mentioned earlier, never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity or incompetence or whatever, however you want to quote it. And I think about that a lot whenever I'm looking at something out there in the world, and I think, come on? Like, this is so absurd. And just sometimes it seems like this confluence of factors coming together that on the one hand seems like, wow, everything worked out so perfectly, terribly that it must have been engineered. But on the other hand, you think, God, but so many different factors went into this that how could it have possibly been engineered? You know, that's always my struggle. It's like, because you want to think like, my gosh, I know some of these, you know, like what these bureaucrats are like, but it's a constant struggle for me to figure out, okay, is this incompetence? Is this malice? Is this probably somewhere in the middle, a mix of both, you know? And then is it just sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy after long enough, where things are set in motion in these smoky back rooms, on whether it's on Jekyll Island or at Rockefeller's house, whatever smoky back room meeting it was. And then from there, they just kind of self-perpetuate because the incentives were set up in that way.
Exactly. That's where the foundations were laid. That's where the malice is. The malice is in the foundation. Is malice a forethought? Like they met. They hashed this out, especially the Federal Reserve Act. I mean, 1910 they met in Jekyll Island. The Federal Reserve Act wasn't pushed through until Christmas week of 1913. They had 3 years to push this agenda, and they did not let go. They went at it. And if you've not, have you read The Secrets of the Federal Reserve?
I have not read that one.
Oh man, that one is an absolute. Hang on.
A lot of good book recommendations coming out of this one. This is great, because it's usually one of my questions at the end, but you've already been laying them down this whole time. It's fantastic.
So if you want to get to like, is it malice or is it incompetence? Right. So here's The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins, and Eustace wrote this in 1948. And he was a student of Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound had been imprisoned by the American, I don't know what 3-letter agency would have been around in the 40s. Let's just say he was just thrown into prison. A mental institution, no less, because of the shit he was espousing, you know, because he was a huge critic of the Second World War, perhaps even both wars, I can't remember exactly. But he was a poet, and he was a literary genius by all accounts. But he had some strong opposing views that he would broadcast across radio, and that we just can't have this guy transmitting. So perhaps he's just raving lunatic, and he needs to be locked and medicated and put away. But Eustace had been listening to him, and he knew he was listening to somebody of a genuine intellect, and was putting across thoughts that he wanted to explore. So he went to visit Ezra, and wanted to be tutored by him. He wanted to be mentored by him. He wanted to be like this great fictional writer. And Ezra Pound said, I tell you what, I will hire you. I'll pay you $10 a month or whatever it was, and I want you to go and write in a fictional way. I want you to write it as a story, as a detective story. I want you to be the detective and go through and uncover all of this. And he gave him a $10 bill. And he said, he pointed to, like, here's the Federal Reserve, a Federal Reserve note. Go and study this and bring me back your notes each week. And so Eustace went off to the National Congressional Library, I believe, and studied there, and studied the minutes of the congressional meetings that were happening between 1910 to 1913. Then he studied the autobiographies of the men that met on Jekyll Island, who, towards the end of their lives, couldn't keep that non-disclosure agreement under their belts. They just had to spill their guts and say, yes, well, we were present that day, and the whole story unfolds. And the book was completed in 1948. It was not printed until 1953. No one would touch this thing. No one would touch it. And it's full of citations directly from congressional meeting minutes and senators that are showing some kind of concern towards Nelson Aldrich and his plan of action to bring around a change of monetary order in the US, and to form a central bank and to get the Federal Reserve Act through. He takes you through the whole thing. Now, that's malice. at the very foundation, because they met. The meeting we know happened. That's facts. We even know some of the conversations that were taking place. We know the people that were there. We know the characters who were involved. And then we can see who's attached to these characters. What are the wider reaching, who's attached to these, these personalities? Well, believe it or not, the Rothschilds were attached to Paul Warburg, who come across from Europe to really hash out this plan. And shockingly enough, J.P. Morgan was attached to one of the guys that was there representing his interest. And even more shockingly enough, Nelson Aldrich, who was the guy that brought all of these gentlemen together to go on this fake duck hunt to Jekyll Island. Have you ever wondered why Nelson Rockefeller was named Nelson? Have you ever wondered why Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller was named Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller? After his grandfather. His grandfather that hosted the meeting at Jekyll Island.
God.
So John D. Rockefeller married his son, John D. Jr., to Abigail Aldrich. This is back in the 1890s. Abigail Aldrich, a socialite. This is just what the old European royal families used to do. They used to marry into families. So he marries his son into the Aldrich family because he knows the senator is on the rise. And then all of a sudden he gets the call from Congress to form the, I forget what it's called, like the monetary commission, monetary commission. So he's now the buddies, right? The family friend, not just buddies, they're family friends. Like Nelson's daughter is married to John D. Jr. and they go and have 5 sons. That's Nelson, John D. III, Winthrop, Lawrence, and Stephen. And they all then go on to carry on the family legacy and create the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. And then they carry on with the General Education Board and just this, that, and the other thing. And then they start pushing the climate agenda and everything else that we're now currently living. So, fuck me, guys. There's no incompetence there.
It's
none
quite
of it.
Competent.
It's very competent. It's very thought out. It's very well planned, decades in advance. This whole system is built on malice, purely. And if malice is built into the foundation of something, it's going to creep out one way or another through the useful idiots that end up in positions of power, decades down the line when you find yourself as head of the education board, or even like the head teacher of a school, or even if you're quite high up in some medical freaking like the CDC, a perfect example. What are you going to do? Is that just incompetence? They went around jabbing fucking hundreds of millions of people? No, I don't think so. Personally, I'm gonna err on the side of no. This was malice put together by freaking depopulationist Malthusian preaching motherfuckers that want to control the world and practice their eugenic mind on just civilians, people that just want to live
and make a bunch of money along the way. So much fucking money along the way, which is just Isn't that great? You get depopulation and you get rich. What a wonderful thing. Wait,
that's the way you just keep compounding your power, and that's explained in this book, Red Symphony, by Jay Landowski.
Now I'm gonna have to spend the next 2 weeks holed up going through these recommendations because these are some incredible.
This one's very thin. Very thin.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
So start with that one.
I want to show you real quick a great quote by none other than Adolf Hitler that I found. The state, I should do it in his accent. The state must declare the child to be the most precious treasure of the people, as long as the government is perceived as working for the benefit of the children. The people will happily endure almost any curtailment of liberty and almost any deprivation. This is exactly the same playbook that they use today. This is exactly the same playbook. Well, don't you care about the children? Don't you care about them, their safety? So this is the way of manipulating the parents, right? Manipulating the parents to accept the state's encroachment on their liberties and their children's liberties by saying, well, if you don't agree with us, clearly you don't love your children, don't care about them, and we're just trying to do what's best. Now, the other one that I found is right here. When an opponent declares, "I will not come over to your side," I calmly say, "Your child belongs to us already. You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." Now, this one is particularly just like troubling, because you see this in every single totalitarian regime throughout history. In all of the communist regimes, it's the same thing. You indoctrinate the children so that, one, they will share the views of the party, of the state apparatus, so that they will grow up to be very good little soldiers and workers of the state. But it's also important that those children be indoctrinated to know when their parents are engaging in wrong think and wrong speak, so that those children can then become your little eyes and ears and actually, basically tattling, reporting their parents for these instances. Because if the state is spending more time with your child than you are, who's having the greater influence on that child? Who is having it? And the state is much more, while they are not good at much, they are very effective at indoctrination, because these systems have been in place for a while now, and they have gotten good at it. And so this is something, again, these are quotes. This is not, Walker and Princey making this stuff up. These are quotes from Adolf Hitler, the Nazi of all Nazis. And I just hope that people come out of this conversation thinking, you know what? Maybe the state doesn't have all the best interests of my children at heart. Maybe I don't need to listen to what they say when it comes to how my children should be educated. Maybe with all the resources that are available to me today, thanks to this glorious internet that we have, I can actually do a much better job in a much shorter time than the state will ever possibly do. And without the added bonus from the state of indoctrination, and I stay away from brainwashing, because the brains aren't completely washed, but they have been fully indoctrinated. And if you spend that much time in public school, especially I feel public school today, because it seems to me the indoctrination has ramped up. Like, we've seen this. We've seen this with the types of things that they're spending their time teaching kids in the classroom, instead of all the things that they claim are very important for your kid to learn, in the classroom. And that's why they must be there for 8 hours a day. But they're spending time on all of these insane woke ideologies that are doing absolutely nothing beneficial for your child. And are, I promise you, a kid needs a couple hours a day, maximum of schoolwork. That's really all you need. Anything more than that is incredibly inefficient and is not going to do them any good. They should be spending time outside. They should be playing. They should be building. Should be starting fires, contained fires for survivalist reasons, not burning down buildings. I loved making fires as a kid because I loved to be outside and I loved camping. These are the things that you can allow your child to do when you no longer allow the state to indoctrinate them, and they will be better for it. And from personal experience, and we, as a homeschooled kid, as you as a father, a parent of homeschooled children, I think we're both fairly well positioned to speak on this and say that it is a massive net benefit, and you don't have to be scared of trying to do it. And I think that back to what you said earlier about just that separation. Yeah, separate money from state. But if we really want a phase shift, a paradigm shift, we have to separate education from state as well. But luckily, in many countries in the world, you can just do that. You don't, like in America, I'm very grateful. Thank you, Daddy State, that you allow me to, homeschool my kid. But no, really, that is something that is your right as a parent. You don't need to ask permission for it, depending on where you live. If you live in Germany, you just can't do it. So rise up against your oppressors who say that you cannot homeschool your kids, because that is fucking insanity. And you will always love your children more than the state does, because the state does not love your children. They don't love anything. The state is the state is the state. You love your children. You want what's best for them. You want to see them succeed and become the incredible people that you know that they can be. The state has no interest in that. They have an interest in beating out any spark of originality, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving. They want you to be great at writing tests, writing essays. They want you to be great at following rules, on doing what you're told, about not asking too many questions, and about not daring to question authority. That is the biggest thing. They do not want you to have the balls to question authority. That is the first thing they will try to beat out of you, and it is done in a consistent and systematized way. And so, if you hate homeschooling, you're a Nazi. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and just, I want to add a few countries, Sweden and Holland as well, completely illegal. And where you are getting faced, it's crazy, man. And France is creeping that way. They want to stamp it out. And Macron said back in 21, I think it was, I couldn't believe the words were coming out of his mouth, that we have to start stamping out homeschooling because it's breeding Islamic terrorists. Like, this is the kind of shit that these people can get away with saying. Like, they can literally say whatever they like. And and Biden in 2020, he gave an address. It was a teacher's some kind of award thing. It was on the lawn of the White House, and Biden was quoted, "There's no such thing as someone else's child." And then he repeated it and continued, "Our nation's children are all our children." It's such a creepy notion that they think that, like, they actually think that way. And it's like you said, yeah, all right, maybe some people have got this far into the show and they're like, fucking hell, Walker and Princey's still going on about this? Like, really? Like, it's like, fuck me. Yeah, because it's this important. And if you're sitting there and you're about to have kids, or you've got kids even in the system, and it's making you feel uncomfortable, then we've done our job. Because at least now, hopefully, we've planted a seed in your mind to at least question it and think about it in a different way, look at it critically, and not be afraid of it, and just know that it's not just us two that's thinking this way. There are millions. And if you want to learn more, there are resources. There are a ton of books. There's conferences. Listen to Scott and Tali Lindbergh's podcast. They've homeschooled their kids throughout to like university age, and they've got incredible resources. And like they're Bitcoiners too. And Scott, he said to me on the podcast, Bitcoiners are homeschoolers that just don't know it yet, and homeschoolers are Bitcoiners that just don't know it yet. And there's a perfect melding here because we all see the same thing. We have to separate these parasitic powers that serve us no purpose, and that's fiat currency, and it's the fiat education system.
Amen. That, Princey, we've been now rolling for almost 2 hours. I did not even notice it. It could have been 15 minutes. We should probably wrap it up.
Buy
I
Bitcoin,
guess.
but do that too, guys. Yeah, buy Bitcoin too. Right? Yeah, stack some sats.
Do that. Do that too. I don't know. I don't even know how we end this one. What do you want to do? Anything else you want to leave folks with? Is there anywhere else we want to go that maybe something actually, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you. Just, you are a homeschooling Bitcoiner, as you said. There's a great synergy there. Lauren has joined you on how many episodes now? You just had your 500th one. She's been there for a while, right? Yeah, just a week ago, 500 was dropped, so we're at like 503 now, something. It's amazing, but you've been able to bring your kids around Bitcoiners to teach your kids about money. It feels like that is one of the most important things that you can teach them, especially for the world that I think we all know is coming, which, like, Bitcoin was the paradigm shift, right? It's a different world after Bitcoin was created. Do you think that, this Bitcoin education, like, would you consider, like, is Bitcoin part of what you teach your kids? Is that part of the homeschooling experience for them? Yeah,
100%. Whether that is, right, sit down, let's look at this, let's go through the Me Prima Bitcoin textbook thing we've got. Let's watch the Tuttle twins together. They do incredible work with their YouTube. It's brilliant. And shout out to, it's right here. Look at this. The Shamory guys that they've released Toma's book, Satoshi Nakamoto and his Bitcoin invention. We've got the games that Hodl Up that Scott and Tarley did together, and Shamory, Scott's game from Scott and Mallory from Shamory as well, and it's in the conversation every single day, and they get to, if they're doing chores, they get to choose fiat or sats. And every now and then they'll choose fiat just because maybe they're going to the cinema this weekend and they want to hang out with their friends and whatever else, and because they can't spend their Bitcoin if they're out, they just need some cash in hand. But otherwise they're choosing sats because they've seen the power of it, and that education, like you said, you don't need to be sat down at a book opening a textbook. Like, monkey see, monkey do. And if they see you, actions speak louder than words. All of these sayings, they're sayings for a reason. They've stood the test of time, and they've seen the difference it's made to me, to the way I probably conduct myself. They've seen all of a sudden, whoa, hang on a minute, we're flying to different countries we've never visited before, and that's my dad on stage talking to people about Bitcoin. And now Sophia in Madeira, she ran with Frankie. Frankie did a great job. Frankie Hodl did a great job of mentoring Sophia. And Sophia was up on stage. She had people coming in and out. She was planning the whole thing. We had Jack Malice and Giacomo in there answering 12-year-old questions to kids, and then taking kids' questions from the audience. All of this stuff is just so incredible to see. And after that 3 days stretch, her and Frankie just broke down in tears. They were like, wow, they had this sense of achievement. Like, we've made a difference to people's lives, to young people's lives. That little tent was packed all the time with kids coming in, playing games and asking questions and interacting. You cannot shut down learning. You just can't, unless you put kids together in a group of 30 and lock them in a windowless room and put a boring flapping head in front of them and tell them what they're about to be taught. That's not learning. There's a difference. And learning happens naturally, and learning happens on your own time. And you just need the room to explore the different thoughts that are coming in. And that's what homeschooling allows. And look, it's not easy. I just want to caveat that, it's not a bed of roses. Like, this is on you. This is the thing that you began with this. It's like, it's very easy. It would have been far easier for your mother to put you on the big yellow bus and wave goodbye to you. Have a nice day. Walker, we'll see you. I'll be standing here in like 8.5 hours when you're back. And, you know, that's great. Enjoy your lunch and your time with your friends. And she would have had to trick herself. I'm doing the best for my children. I'm sure of it. Like, no, but she took responsibility. So homeschooled parents, they have fingers pointed at them as irresponsible parents. And as usual, with everything in clown world, that is completely inverted. Because actually, you have taken complete 100% responsibility now because you're not sending them. You're not taking the easy, just put them on the bus, see you later. It's on you. And you're going to be judged far harder for the next 15 to 20 years than anybody else that is just putting them on the yellow bus because, hey, that's where the crowd is. And if you stand away from it as Bitcoiners, you know that. And as Bitcoiners, you do get used to it. And you should embrace that. Follow the masses and do the opposite. Who was that? Twain, I think? Like that's so freaking true in so many areas of our lives. And if you've got the mental fortitude to do that, and it's not easy, start slow, take a run at it. You know, there's nothing wrong, I'm sure, in many parts of the world where you can take your kids out of school for an extended trip, go travel. You don't even have to go travel if you don't want. Like, you know, just try it and just see and connect with the homeschoolers in your community because they're there. I guarantee it. You don't know they're there because you don't see them. But if you find that Facebook group or wherever that they're hanging out, there are meetups. We're going to one on Friday here in where we live in the town, and we're looking forward to that. Meeting new people. You might not meet new friends. You might not vibe with them. You don't vibe with all the Bitcoiners you meet either. It's the same thing, right? But there's community and there are resources, and there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't give it a try, and certainly not if you really, God forbid, if you see a change in your child's behavior, if you see them just dejected or sad or this is not come on, we've got one life. Let's not do this. It doesn't have to be this way. And that just means taking responsibility and standing out from the crowd, drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, this is my children. This is my responsibility. I brought them into this world and I want to give them the best opportunities that life can afford them. And believe me, it's not found in an institution that just has been designed to cripple creativity, as Sir Ken Robinson said, and just demolish that love of learning. That's not what we're here to do. So that's the message I want to leave people with. And yeah, my Twitter is open, my Nostr is open, or at least I think my Twitter's open. I hope so. Orange Pill app. Otherwise, join the app and come and find me there. Or if you can't get hold of me, get hold of Walker and he can put you on to me. I'm more than happy to help anybody out with further discussion. My book there is Choose Life. It's all in here, the decisions my wife and I went through and the adventures we had, good, bad, and ugly. And you can find that on bitcoinbook.shop. That's a Bitcoin-only place where you can buy Bitcoin books. And if you use the code BITTEN, BITTEN, you'll get 10% off that. And any other book that you put in your basket for Christmas. And the book's available in English and Spanish.
Love it, man. Daniel, this was a great time talking with you here and catching up. And my dog clearly needs a walk.
All right.
But I'll just say thanks again for sharing your scarce time. I'll drop all your links in the show notes too for anyone to get. I'll send the recording to you as well for this crossover Bitcoin podcast, Once Bitten mashup. This I think we got to do this again now. This was great.
For sure, man. For sure.
And
I can't
thank you to Lauren
do
for joining.
Because I got to say, Walker, thank you so much for your time.
Here we go.
Thank you for joining the Once Bitten podcast today and hanging with Lauren and everything that you have done and continue to do for Bitcoin. You and Carla have been an incredible force in this space for waking people up with, you know, the memes you guys have put together. People might look at them and think, oh yeah, it's goofy and whatever else. But I know that the work that's going in the background there, like you guys, you're writing the scripts, you're brainstorming this stuff, you're thinking about it, then you're getting the costumes together and you're practicing it, you're editing it and all this kind of stuff. Then you just post it up on Twitter for people to look at, laugh at, critique, and move on. But now you can put it on Nostr and we can zap you, and that's something that's way better. And hanging out with you guys in Miami was awesome. One of my favorite parts of that trip was we had no idea Carla was pregnant at that time.
Yeah.
She told us, she informed us in Prague. You guys come to Prague in June then. And then it all started clicking. He's like, that's why we wouldn't see her at breakfast in the morning, because she was just couldn't face food and, you know, was having but she was a trooper, man. She got up on stage. You guys were emceeing and just like crushed it. And the shout out to Anders and Pubby for the rooftop bar event that they put on in Miami. I was sitting down.
I love
with
those
the kids.
guys.
They're the best. I was sitting down with the kids, and they put up the mashup of all the memes, and Carla came down and just hung next to us. So we were all sitting there, and then on come your ABBA mashup, which is one of my favorite ever Bitcoin memes, and it was just such a thrill just to sit there. We're in a rooftop bar surrounded by Bitcoiners. Everyone's on a deck chair, eating popcorn, watching our favorite Bitcoin memes. And up comes, you guys. And I'm sat right there next to Carla. I'm like, no way. She's singing away next to me. I'm thinking, this is absolutely fucking awesome that I can just be here with these guys and share this moment. So you've both been so great. Such an asset to the whole community, and thank you for everything that you're doing and starting your podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys and your little guy at some stage very soon.
You know, his first conference was technically that Miami conference. He was just, in his very early stages in the belly. But no, I appreciate that. And Carla is currently working on her Christmas song. So in the coming weeks, should be coming out here. She was just, I won't give anything away with it, but I'll just say it's as Carla, she doesn't make any flops, so it's a winner. I think people are going to enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to it. Very much forward to it. And I'll be zapping on Nostr.
Hey, love it. Hey, Princey, thank you for your time here. I'm going to cut this live stream now. Thank you to everybody who joined and zapped. I'm going to send all the sats that were sent to OpenSats to support open source development. And thanks for being here, everyone. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net/sponsor or send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net. If you are enjoying the Bitcoin Podcast and find it valuable, give it a boost on Fountain, a 5-star review wherever you're listening, or better yet, share this show with your network so more people can learn about Bitcoin. Or don't. Bitcoin doesn't care, but I sure do appreciate it. You can grab links in the show notes to watch or listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts, or go to bitcoinpodcast.net/podcast. And you'll also find the links to follow me and the show on Nostr and on X. Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million, but Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time to listen to the Bitcoin Podcast. Until next time, stay free.